It started on a Sunday morning, the kind of morning where the sunlight's just barely peeking over the hills, the coffee's hot in your hand, and the only sounds are cattle lowing in the distance and maybe a meadowlark somewhere off by the old barn. That's when I noticed something was off. I'm talking that gut feeling that says, hey, you better take a closer look. I saw it the second I looked. At the east pasture fence, the wire was sagging, loose, and there, plain as day, 2 sections had been snipped, the ends curling like they'd just been hit with bolt cutters. Let me tell you, my heart dropped. This wasn't some kid messing around. My property borders a state wildlife preserve, and that fence is more than just a pile of wire. It's a line between wild and tame, between my herd and the herds that belong to nobody but the land itself. Whoever did this, they knew exactly what they were doing. And wouldn't you know it, before I even had time to go back for my gloves, here comes Karen. Yeah, that Karen, stomping across her manicured lawn like she owns the horizon, sun visor gleaming, clutching a clipboard so hard you'd think she was waiting for a photo op. Morning, she shouts, like she's at a parade. Don't worry, I fixed your little property problem. That fence was an eyesore. The HOA voted that it blocks the natural view, so I cut it. I swear, I could feel my blood pressure spike. I set my jaw, counting to 3 under my breath. Karen, that fence isn't an eyesore. It's a wildlife barrier. You just broke state law. She snorts. Does this dismissive little wave, like laws, rules, regulations. They don't apply when the HOA decides what's best. And I decided that fence had to go. Now, I know I should have walked away. But she just kept going. That fence keeps bison from wandering into traffic, I said, as calm as I could manage. If they break through, it's on you. Karen just rolled her eyes, and I'll never forget what she said next. Bison, deer, cows, whatever. Animals can figure it out. Besides, I want a better view of the sunset. You should thank me. And as if the universe itself wanted to prove a point, the ground started to tremble, low at first, then building, the way thunder gets inside your chest. I turned, and there they were, a whole herd of wild bison, coming straight through the gap. Massive shoulders moving like a wave. Karen went dead silent. Not a peep. All that bravado gone. She actually whispered, "What are those?" And I just looked at her and said, "Those are why the fence was there." The bison barreled right onto her pristine lawn, ripping up sod, flattening the white picket fence she'd installed last year, trampling her roses like they were nothing but weeds. One massive bull, big as a pickup, stopped right at her patio and snorted, pawing at the ground like he was considering redecorating. Karen shrieked, high and loud, the kind that makes birds take off. From the trees, I grabbed my radio and called the rangers, barely able to hear myself over the chaos. Within minutes, the wildlife trucks were pulling up, guys with tranquilizer rifles and lassos. Moving fast, they managed to herd the bison back toward the preserve, but not before Karen's yard looked like something out of an apocalypse movie. One of the rangers, this guy with a mustache and a stare that could drill through steel, looked at the mess and asked, "Who cut this fence?" I pointed at Karen, no hesitation. She did. Said it blocked her view. Karen tried to wave it off. Suddenly all nerves and excuses. I didn't know it was important. Nobody told me. The ranger wasn't buying it. "Ma'am, this fence is federally regulated. Cutting it is a criminal act. You've endangered wildlife, ranch property, and motorists. You're under arrest." Karen lost it, screeching, "This is harassment. I'm the HOA president. You can't arrest me for landscaping." But yeah, they could, and they did, right there on her own patio, handcuffs and everything. You know what I mean? Sometimes karma just doesn't waste any time. That night, Karen was booked into county jail for destruction of federal property and endangering protected wildlife. The whole thing was on the evening news before I'd even had a chance to finish repairing the fence. Word spread like wildfire. Neighbors, the HOA board, everyone was talking. At the emergency meeting the next day, folks who'd always grumbled about Karen but never stood up suddenly had plenty to say. They demanded her resignation, called her reckless, and when she tried to protest, they just reminded her about the bison stampede. You should have seen her face. But here's the thing, not everyone saw it coming. There was this one guy, new to the neighborhood, who stood up and said maybe Karen was just trying to do what she thought was best for the view. Maybe the rules weren't so clear. It threw me for a second. For a moment, the room got quiet, and I saw some folks actually nodding. Like maybe they felt bad for her, or maybe they were just tired of all the fighting. I realized then that every community's got at least one twist, someone who shakes up your perspective, even when the facts are plain as day. In the end, though, the board voted to kick Karen out. The state sent me a thank you letter for catching the problem before it got worse. I put up a brand new camera system along the fence line, and now every time the wind shifts just right and I hear the faint echo of hooves out on the range. I remember that morning. The sun, the coffee, and the line between wild and tame that's easy to forget until it comes crashing right through your backyard. Karen thought cutting the fence would open up her view. What she really did was open up a whole can of consequences, criminal charges, a ruined yard, and a reputation that'll outlast any sunset. Out here, fences mean more than property lines. They're about safety, about respect, about understanding that nature's not just scenery for your back deck. And if you ever forget that, well, don't be surprised when the law and 100 angry bison come charging right back at you. So, what do you think? Was the fence the real problem, or was it the folks who think the rules don't apply to them? Drop your thoughts below, share your own wild neighborhood story, and let's talk about where the line really ought to be drawn. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Karen, out. Fence repaired. Life on the ranch settling back into its old rhythm. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that nothing ever goes back to exactly the way it was, not after a mess like that. Word spread beyond our little stretch of road. A video someone took of the bison in Karen's yard made the rounds on social media, and suddenly there were folks driving out just to snap pictures from the road, like our place was some kind of roadside zoo. At first it was just the curious types, the kind who slowed down but never stop. But pretty soon the real headaches showed up: reporters, wildlife activists, even a couple of politicians sniffing around for a photo op. It was a circus, I swear. You had reporters sticking microphones over the fence, asking if I thought the HOA was out of control, or if I'd be suing Karen, or if I felt threatened, living next to someone who hated wildlife barriers. There was even this one guy who claimed to be an influencer, never caught his name, just his ring light and the clouds of cologne he trailed everywhere, who wanted to collab on a video about frontier justice. Yeah, that happened. I just kept my answers simple and stuck to fixing what needed fixing. Meanwhile, the HOA was scrambling, trying to act like none of this had anything to do with them, posting statements about individual actions not reflecting community values. The whole 9 yards. But the real twist came a couple weeks later. Karen posted bail, came back home, and for a while it was like watching someone in a play, pretending nothing happened. She'd be out there every morning with her clipboard, talking to her roses, what was left of them, waving at cars, acting like the same queen bee she always was. But you could see the cracks. People who used to nod at her in the street looked away. Some of the neighbors, folks who always kept their noses out of things, suddenly had opinions, and they weren't shy about sharing them. That's when the rumors started. About Karen lawyering up, about her threatening to sue the HOA for not protecting her from the consequences of her own choices, about her trying to spin the whole thing as a misunderstanding. Now, let me back up a sec, because this part gets complicated. Turns out, some of the board members didn't want Karen to go down alone. One guy, Greg, started showing up at my place asking about the fence, about how much it cost, about whether maybe I'd consider dropping the charges if the HOA paid for repairs. He even hinted, real careful, like he was testing the water, that maybe the board could find a compromise if I'd agree to, I don't know, sweep the whole thing under the rug. I just looked at him and said, Greg, a fence is a fence, but the law's the law. I'm not the one pressing charges. The state is. You can't negotiate with a herd of bison or a game warden. You know what I mean. And while all this was going on, someone, never found out who, started putting up anonymous flyers around the neighborhood, talking about property rights and overreach and who really owns the land out here. It was wild. Suddenly, people who'd never cared about the fence before were arguing about what it really meant. Was it just wire and posts, or was it something bigger? A line in the sand about who gets to make the rules and who has to live with them. Then, one morning, I caught a couple of kids from down the road poking at the new cameras I'd installed. They looked guilty as hell, but when I asked them what they were up to, They said their parents told them. The ranchers got secrets to hide. It knocked the wind out of me. That's when I realized this wasn't about Karen anymore, or the HOA, or even the bison. This was about trust, about what happens when you let one person's bad decision shake the ground everyone else stands on. And so, instead of fading away, the whole mess turned into this ongoing battle, not with angry bison, but with suspicion, gossip, and folks drawing their own lines in the dirt. The fence got repaired, sure, but something invisible stayed broken for a long while after. I spent evenings patching more than just wire, talking to neighbors who suddenly wanted to know my whole life story, explaining, again and again, why that fence matters. And you know, not everyone agreed. Some people think rules are made to be bent, especially if you think you're doing it for the greater good or just for a better view. Still, I'll say this, living out here, you learn that trouble always leaves tracks, and if you follow them long enough, you usually end up back where you started, face to face with yourself, wondering what you could have done differently. As for Karen, last I heard, she moved away, couldn't stand the sideways glances, the whispers at the grocery store, the fact that her legacy was now a punchline at every HOA meeting. Greg? He lost his spot on the board in the next election. The new folks put up fresh signs along the property line, and I haven't seen a bolt cutter or a sun visor since. And me? I still get up early. Still sip my coffee on that porch. Still listen to the cattle lowing and the fence wires humming in the wind. The world didn't end. The grass still grows, and every so often, I catch a glimpse of bison out on the preserve, peaceful, wild, right where they belong. Sometimes I wonder if folks will ever stop arguing about lines and start talking to each other instead. But hey, that's just how it goes. Out here, you fix what you can, you watch the horizon, and you never forget how fast things can change when you least expect it. So what about you? Have you ever seen a simple fence turn into a full-blown war? Where do you draw the line, and what would you have done differently? Let me know down below, and if you've got a story about your own neighborhood wildness, I'm all ears. Because out here, every fence has two sides, and every story's got another chapter waiting to be told.